being your host. My name is Ivanovic-Tongue, and today I've got a great privilege of having in this session with me Paul Veric, another itch. So you've got two itches today. You feel particularly blessed, and Matthew Peacock from IPromise. This is a really, really hot topic. It's how do you secure your payments before the work even starts, and more importantly, how do you eliminate all the time invoicing and admin time, chasing payments and dreading whether you will or won't get paid as a SME to make sure that your cash flow is on track? Because as we all know, cash flow is super important for small businesses. So good morning, Paul and Matthew, and welcome to today's session. Good. Tell us a bit about what IPromise is about.
Yeah, so IPromise is an app that does what you just said. It secures payment before the work's done, so that suppliers get paid immediately that they finish the job. And we think, as you pointed out, and we'll run through a bit of a presentation soon, but as you pointed out, it's a really hot topic. Anyone that saw even Fair Go last night would have seen there's a couple of articles on that even last night around deposits and people losing money, unfortunately, through the current payment cycle.
Brilliant. And it's a big thing, right? It's also got impact. It's got a personal impact on our small businesses, but it also has got a greater impact on the economy as well, given that the economy of New Zealand is small businesses. So over to you guys. Let's hear all about it.
Great. Well, I'll get Matt to bring up the presentation, and thanks very much for having us here today, and welcome to the people listening. So yes, as pointed out, we're IPromise, your fair and secure payment partner. And one of the things we thought we'd start with is this slide here, because it's pretty relevant. If an invoice is due in 30 days, we'll pay it in 60 days. If it's due in 60 days, we'll pay it in 90 days. And if it's due in 90 days, then they probably don't need the money anyway. So certainly something I think everyone's got a story about. Everyone knows someone who's been in that situation of having to chase for payments. Myself and Matt, introduce Matt, co-founder of IPromise. He'll tell you a little bit about himself.
Morning, everyone. Morning, Anna. Thanks for the introduction. So about 2.5 years ago, Paul and I teamed up to start IPromise. And previous to that, I've been a consultant, civil and structural engineer, self-employed for 20 years, and working as a small business. And doing the work, sending out quotes, and waiting for people to pay me. And that was a regular cycle for me. And, I got frustrated after a while because, it takes a long time for people to pay you sometimes. Sometimes people don't even pay you. And sometimes people go bankrupt and go into liquidation. So I just thought that, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I'd heard about this thing called escrow. And escrow's, mostly used on bigger businesses, bigger goods, perhaps bigger items, and thought, how can we use escrow for the small business to get started? So, yeah, hooked up with Paul, and we spent a great year and a half just going through the system and building IPromise.
Thanks, Matt. My background's not as a civil or structural engineer. I'm more of a senior manager and CEO. So I've been lucky enough to have many roles across quite a array of sectors, actually, not-for-profit sector, tech sector, the manufacturing sector, and even spent a time as a principal of quite a large traditional boys' school here in Taranaki. And more recently, I've been a consultant, management consultant, working for myself, and as Matt pointed out, teamed up with him to really devote all of our time actually onto IPromise.
How did you guys meet?
We've been friends since we're about 13 years old, so it's quite a long friendship through surf lifesaving actually. So running around on the beaches of all around New Zealand, actually competing and training.
And actually, that's a good question about having a co-founder. Someone like I know there's different stories for different people, but Paul and I knew each other really well. We knew our strengths, we knew what we'd done. So that was a really good connection for us.
It is super important and really interesting that, right? Because you also always hear the other side of that, or kind of never go into the business with friends. But I think that there is arguments to be made on both sides. And when you know each other's strengths and have got that sort of strength of relationship, It will also be really fun working with somebody you know for so long, right? So there's an implicit trust there in knowing each other.
Absolutely, there's a lot of backstories and a lot of adversity overcome and challenges faced, and I think that's what happens in a startup too, isn't it? And I think that's been really great for us. And as Matt said, we're same but different, and it's that difference that's been important to get us, get the company to where it is at the moment. Brilliant.
And how long have you guys been going for?
So we launched late last year. So it's around seven months now of officially being in the public arena. So that's gone pretty quick though. It feels like about 7 weeks.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, let's get into it. I'm going to be managing some of the chats and the questions in the back end. So I might get off the camera shortly if I can figure out how to do that. I'll let you guys take the screen over and take us through the presentation for today.
Great. Awesome. Are you seeing that presentation at the moment, Anna?
No, I am not.
Oh.
Let me just make sure that you are on the presenters mode. Okay, I think you're hosting now.
Oh, we are the host now. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Apologies for that.
Oh, it's okay. We were presenting some of our slides and no one was seeing them. That's even better.
Try to end up being a great little chat.
Yeah.
Here we go.
How's that looking? Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Great, awesome. So this was the slide that would have made no sense to anyone when I was reading it out, but essentially if an invoice is due in 30 days, we pay it in 60. If it's due in 60, we pay it in 90. But again, following up on that issue of people just not receiving payments. Matt and I have talked a little bit about ourselves and the problem which many people have researched, and we glean a lot of our research from Xero, who are really great at highlighting the problems and things that are going on around New Zealand and around the world actually. Currently there's 7.4 billion in overdue payments in New Zealand, a staggering figure, and again, everyone will have a story or know someone that's waiting patiently for payment. 20 million hours are spent chasing late payments per annum. And 80% of small businesses report having overdue invoices. 42% of clients have insufficient funds to pay their invoice, which again is another Xero stat, and really worrying for any small business who actually can think, well, the clients don't actually have the money. And invoice financing, 20 billion of invoice financing, an estimated amount in New Zealand. We've got more detailed figures in Australia, and it's 75 billion. So just a huge problem. We also think that that no one's really solving the problem. There's lots of great companies working in and around the space doing their best to help. And here's an example of many of those companies doing some really great work, some really innovative companies. And they are helping and certainly easing the burden, certainly making it easier for small companies and small businesses to operate. But it's not really addressing the root cause of the problem. There's 4 quadrants that we talk about quite a bit with IPromise. There's the project management side, and there's another example of so many great companies doing some great work in project management. There's quoting and invoicing. There's communication. But then there's a secure payment and securing payment side, which we think's really lacking. And there's not the same emphasis and what we would think importance placed on the securing the payment. There's lots around what you do with it once you've got it, or lots around asking people to get paid, but it's that securing of that payment that we think's really important. And all those unsecured payments that are out in the market at the moment are largely the responsibility of the supplier. And we find that a little bit strange and a little bit imbalanced. So a client's requesting a service off an engineer like Matt, or off someone that's a web designer, a marketer, a builder, a plumber. The client's requested that person to do the job. So they said, please come and fix my roof. Yet the payment and the collection of the payment from that person is the responsibility of the person providing that service. And we just don't think that seems right. It seems wrong. That they're the people that have to have overdrafts to cover the average of 4 months per year that small businesses are in negative cash flow. So they've got the overdraft. They're having to get debt collectors. They're having to do phone calls and make that uncomfortable call to say, hey, please, the 20th of the month is gone. I really need this. My family need this. We need it for groceries. And then there's the other things that we've already mentioned around invoice factoring and invoice financing. Now, all those things come at a cost. They come at a cost of margin to the supplier, the person that's providing the service. And we think that's around the wrong way. All of the things that are happening at the moment are really about the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And when Matt and I got together about to work on IPromise, we really wanted to be the prevention rather than the cure. And we think that there's a much easier and better way of securing your payments upfront, and therefore not having to rely on those costly methods to collect payment. So when we go through the different quadrants, we've got project management, the invoicing, the communication, and the securing payment. As IPromise neatly fits in all of those 4 areas, and we offer a complete service that covers all of those 4 quadrants. And while we're focusing on the securing payment, those other things still need to happen. And so the ability to manage your projects and communicate and also send invoices is something that we've had to build as part of our solution. The current payment process, we like to remind people, everyone will know what this is because you've been through it, but it's really to highlight the inefficiencies that occur through that process. When you start, the client requests a quote, as we mentioned before. We assess as a supplier, can the client pay? Not many credit checks are done these days. The supplier just really trusts. 1, they don't have the time to do the credit check. 2, it can cost. And so really they make a judgment, do I think that this person can pay? And most of the time that judgment's very, very quick. The supplier quotes the job, and we all know the different methods. There's verbal, paper, text, e-quotes. The client then sends the quote to the supplier sends the quote to the client.
And sometimes it ends up in the junk mail. I had that many times, right? When it ends up in the junk bin and you don't even see it until a couple of weeks later. Absolutely.
The job's then completed. And again, this process can take months or weeks. The job's completed. The supplier then informs the client. Normally the person will know because the thing's a physical thing and they can see it having been completed. And at the end of the month, normally someone in the small business, often it can be the partner of the person who's running the small business, but it could be the accounts person, it could be them themselves if they're a sole trader. They get around, they get all their invoices and all their receipts and they bring them together and they try and go through the process of generating that invoice at the end of the month, normally for payment on the 20th of the following month. The client receives that invoice and we say the client pays whenever they want. Because yes, there's a date that says please pay by 7 days, but what happens if you don't? It's totally up to the client to make their decision on when they've got the money, when they're going to pay that invoice. Supplier sends reminder invoices, and we know from the stats out there at the moment and the research that many people have to send a reminder, and that's can be automated, but often it's a manual process. Could be a phone call as well. Supplier finally receives payment. The supplier issues the receipt, and the job's closed. And so that's 11 steps for something that we think should be so much more simple. And you'll see soon how we've tried to streamline that process.
And that's your happy path, right? That's assuming that there is no.
Yeah.
This is the best case scenario. We've got a little short video, a little animation that we've put together, which we like to use because it really sums up and shows how IPromise works.
Every client wants their job completed on time and within the agreed budget. Every supplier wants to be paid on time. Now there's a fair and secure solution that gives everyone what they want. IPromise automates the way projects are quoted and payments are managed. First, the supplier quotes the project, scope of the work, and the price. Then, once the client accepts the quote, payment is transferred to an independent and secure BNZ trust account, where the money is held securely until the project is completed. So the supplier can start work with no more admin hassles and no uncertainty about cash flow. Suppliers and clients can use the instant chat function to keep in constant contact. So everyone has peace of mind, because payments will only be released when the project is delivered to everyone's satisfaction. And that means no more days wasted with credit checking, chasing bad debts, or even haggling over an unfinished project. Because IPromise connects and protects both the supplier and the client so that you can focus on the job at hand. Because IPromise is your fair and secure payment partner. Start your free subscription today. Every client.
Makes sense, Anna?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. In fact, I've got to give it to you guys. Obviously did a bit of research over the weekend and went online and had a look at, you've got some amazing video resources, probably more than I've seen on some of the big digital platforms that are promoted. You've done a really great job there of kind of unparceling that and having a little bite-sized learning for different purposes and different, obviously, whether it's a service or a product, how things work. So great job there, guys. And for those of you watching, if you're obviously interested, to go on the IPromise website and have a look at some of those video resources. They're fabulous.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we that's one of the difficult things about trying to do something new. You know, it's really new, and without a lot of information to try and explain to people how it works, it can be hard to grasp, even though it's a simple concept. You know, we've tried to make it simple for people to watch videos or read something to try and understand how it works for them. So look, Paul's explained, you know, what the current process is for someone quoting and receiving payment, and the video explained how IPromise does it. And this is our simple steps here. And the first stage for someone is to make a quote, and the quoting phase is really the information gathering stage for the whole project, based on the quote. You know, everything is almost automated. You know, the payment administration stuff becomes sort of automated based on the quote. So the supplier does the quote, the client receives the quote, and that could be via an email, or if they're using the app, it'll appear on their app, and then they accept the quote. There's a button down here for them to accept, and then part of accepting the quote, it sends them straight through to payment, and payments handled by WinCave for us. And WinCave is a international standard payment platform. You see it everywhere. They do EFTPOS machines, they do online transactions. So we integrate with them. You can pay via account to account payment, or you can pay via credit card, which means that suppliers essentially have a facility for clients to pay by credit card, which is really difficult at the moment. There's not many suppliers that have that feature. So once the client's paid, money goes into the BNZ Trust account, and the money's secure, and the supplier can start the project. You know, they know that the client's committed, they've got the money, and they can do the work. So they complete the project. And then once the project's completed, the supplier sends a notification to the client. The client gets a notification, and just simply by the click of a button, they're like, look, I'm happy with what's been done. And the payment can be released. So the payment's released to the supplier. And that happens, now within the banking system timing. So, it's literally half an hour to 3 or 4 hours that they'll receive payment from the client saying that the project's completed. So there's no invoice to send, there's no receipts to send, none of that stuff. And then the final part of IPromise is we're building a system of suppliers and clients, and we want to know how those people, are behaving. It's like using TradeMe, it's like doing a trade with someone, it's like booking an Airbnb or an Uber. So there's a rate and there's a feedback part of IPromise, and then we can capture people's ratings and see how people are performing on the platform. So that's the 6 steps there. We're just going to quickly show you another video which runs through these steps. It's quite a quick video, and just bear in mind that it's done in succession, whereas normally if someone's doing this, they'd send a quote, they'd wait a couple of days, and then someone would accept it, and then they'd reply and they'd do the job, and there'd be a bit of lag between this, but everything's kind of bunched together in this.
Hi there, I'm Matt Peacock, co-founder of IPromise. This is how to use IPromise. I'll get to IPromise.
Well, the volumes, the sound's getting a bit lost there. Matthew, do you think you can just maybe crank it up your end and let's see?
Is it better?
No, we're not getting the sound through, but that's
Okay.
okay. I think leave the images because it kind of takes you visually through it anyway.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can do the voiceover,
Yeah,
give it
yeah.
a voice anyway.
So this is the quoting phase. The quote's been sent to the client. So now here's the client. The client's received an email. And then there's the quote laid out to them. And then they accept the quote in the email. And they've just come through to the platform. And this is the accepting the quote stage. So once they've accepted, they go through to payment. And then you'll see here, this is the WinCave payment process. So you pretty much log into your bank, follow the steps. There's nothing really to fill out because it's all pre-populated from the quote. And then they make the payment, and then the project turns to in progress. So that means that the supplier complete the job. And once they're completed, they notify the client. So they click the completed button at the bottom and they send the notification. And now there's the process of the payment being released to the supplier. So the client gets the email, they accept the project's completed. There's a few prompts for them. And then the money's been released from the trust account. And like I was saying before, within half an hour, 3 to 4 hours, the payment comes through to their account. And the final phase is just the rate and review. So that's the quick version.
And Matthew, what is the rating of the kind of the happy faces? You said that you kind of referenced that it shows you a bit of a performance of the platform. But what does it do in real life? Is it a bit of a reputational thing? If people are not actually doing what they're meant to be doing, what happens? What's the sort of the impact, I guess, or the outcome for the either client or the supplier? Yeah,
so Paul and I have kind of looked at other rating and reviews of platforms, and no one really wants a bad review on TradeMe. Like or a bad Uber review or a bad Airbnb Bookabatch review or something like that. So our hope is that it will just get people working, to their ability, and what they should be providing. And then the other thing which IPromise will move into is that we will want to create the ability for people to post work on IPromise, and then in doing that, within that request for, a quote, those people might just be, look, I only want people who are 4 or 5 stars to quote this job because they're the ones with a reputation of doing a good job. So we're hoping it's going to lift those people up that maybe aren't doing such a good job or are maybe a little bit, argumentative in their process of doing the job, and just trying to make it a more fairer way of clients and suppliers working together.
So it's really a feedback for them. It's not like there is a leaderboard or anything like that. It's more just to kind of have that feedback and be a bit self-reflective. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So our unique solution, if you haven't, picked it up in the videos we've shown, but we're securing the client's payment before the project starts. And IPromise is for all invoicing service providers. So, it's just not your construction workers. It's, your marketers. It's your consultants. It's anyone who does work and then invoices. They can now do it. One way we explain it to people is that you could take a deposit before you start the work currently. So if you can do that, you can use IPromise, but this is a secured deposit rather than an unsecured deposit. But then you can keep using it for the project. Businesses receive immediate payment on successful project completion. And I'll just say again, there's no invoicing. You don't wait a week to send an invoice and then wait 14 days to receive payment. Once you've done the job, you click completed, and then payment comes through. We integrate with Xero, and what we mean by that is that if you use Xero and you use IPromise, when a quote gets accepted in IPromise, it sends that information to Xero and it automatically creates a quote in Xero. So you're not having to re-quote in Xero. It's all done there automatically. The only thing that needs to happen is that when the payment comes through, you just balance the payment with the money that's come in, which is standard. So again, administration, it's the quoting phase, which is the work, and then everything ties into that afterwards. All the invoicing and all that's automated, and then just the balancing of the accounts. And the other thing is that this is good for clients, so clients know the money is secure somewhere, and if they're not getting the job done as per the quote, as per the specification, they don't need to release the payment until it's done as per the quote. So there's this reassurance that you're not going to give someone some money and perhaps they're going to spend it on another project, and perhaps they're in financial problems and the money, you're not going to see the project completed. So
obviously a hot topic in construction as well, right?
It is.
You want to know that money is there and secured, and that you've got that level of assurance that even if things do go south,
the
deposit is there.
Yeah, it's a big thing, at the moment. There's stuff to do with, areas of the construction industry that aren't doing so well, and there's concern about from clients about what's going to happen to deposits and money. So we've had people come on board and using us so they can reassure their clients that their money's protected. It's in a third party trust account, and then if anything happens to that business, then their payment's protected. So we're offering a subscription model, which is how IPromise works. And the $20 per month is 5 accepted quotes. The $40 per month is 15 accepted quotes, and the $90 per month is unlimited accepted quotes. And what we mean by that is that you can quote as many times as you want, but until a job gets accepted, then it counts as one of your, say, 5 or one of your 15. So someone potentially doing $300,000 or $400,000 a month in invoicing for $90 a month, it protects all of those payments. So it's a tiny amount to pay for securing payments. And the other thing we offer is, at the moment, there's a free 90-day trial. And the reason we've chosen 90 days is that that's quite a good life cycle from quoting to doing a project to getting paid. Anything like a 7-day or 14-day trial just doesn't touch on the process of quoting, doing the project and getting paid. It's always free for clients to use IPromise, so we don't take a commission. There's no hidden commission fees. And then also the BNZ Trust account, the interest that's earned there, we donate to charity. So we've already donated to the Heart Foundation. and we've already donated to Starship Foundation since we've launched. So that covers the sort of the supplier service provider, people doing work. The other side of IPromise is buying and selling. And what we mean by this is, you know, if you're on Trade Me or if you're on Facebook Marketplace and, you know, maybe it's an e-commerce site and you've bought something or selling something, and, you know, there's this funny transaction, you know, payment, you know, worry that lots of people have. I'm sure lots of people have had that worry. We've coined it transaction chicken, and it's, you know, do we send the goods, or do you pay me first, or, you know, do you pay me first and then I send the goods? You know, like there's heaps of anxiety around this, and I think everyone we speak to, you know, is just like, oh my God, what do I do? You know, like, and, you know, how do I get around this? So with IPromise, you know, we can fix it. I'll show you the steps in a minute.
Especially with the e-commerce as well, you know, like it's amazing. And it's interesting how the cultural kind of intelligence and preconceptions play into that space. You know, with Trade Me, we almost got really accustomed to trustiness because I'm within New Zealand and they're typically lower amounts and it's okay, you know, but I had a couple of years ago buy a daybed from China and I had no idea what's going to arrive from what I saw in the image, you know, like you have those trepidations closer to time of going, what am I actually going to get? You know, whether that image was accurate or it wasn't accurate. You know, am I mad? Am I crazy? Should I be doing this? But if something like this can help eliminate some of that and actually, you know, kind of reinforce the safe trading globally, because that is the reality of our world these days. Exactly.
It is. Yeah. So at the moment, we're working independent of on any of these selling platforms like Trade Me or Facebook Marketplace, but you can still use IPromise. There's no cost to the buyer. Again, if you're buying something, the price is the price. There's no cost to you. And this is how it works. So say you're on Facebook Marketplace, you agree the price with someone that you want to pay for the item. The seller of the item sends you a quote. So, you know, you'll get an email and say, look, here's the quote for the vehicle you wanted to purchase. The buyer accepts and then goes through that payment process using WinCave, and they transfer the money into the BNZ Trust account where it's held. And then the supplier the seller can supply the item. You know, they know they've got the money's secure. I can send the item now to the buyer. And then the buyer receives the item, and if it's as per what they thought, you know, what they quoted, then they click, yep, I accept, I've received the payment, received the product, and then the money's released to the seller. So, you know, and again, there's potentially disputes within this process, but at least the money's not with one person. You know, at least the client's not holding on to the money saying, I'm not going to pay you, it's not what I thought it was. You know, the money's secure and they resolve the dispute. So,
and Matthew, does it assume that both the supplier and the client purchaser need to kind of have IPromise, or could only one side have IPromise?
Only one side needs to have IPromise. So just the person selling, they can send the quote from with IPromise, and then the buyer receives an email. So so then that sets the motion.
Nice.
So in the sort of 2.5 years that Paul and I first met and spoke, we've progressed, and we've got the goods and services operating. We are integrated with Xero, and, you know, mirroring quotes with compliance with, you know, a whole bunch of regulatory demands we've had, the web apps developed, and banking integration with BNZ and WinCave and Stripe. We've got customer testimonials, and we've had over $700,000 through the trust account. So it's been busy. There's been lots of learnings on the way. You know, people who are listening and and perhaps they're in the startup mode and they're, wanting to develop something. Things don't all happen at once. And, we've had to do things to do with AML, anti-money laundering, just because we come under the Wire Transfer Act. And that's something that Paul and I knew very little about. But it's, you speak with the people that know about it and you learn lots and then you move on. So
that's a great learning, isn't it? Because there are sort of things that you can foresee, and then there's a whole lot of things that you can't foresee, and you just need to work your way through. What were some of your biggest surprises in terms of going on this journey together of having a startup and getting the company going? What really surprised you in terms of what you originally thought to how it turned out, or some of those other lessons that you might have learned?
I think the product evolved from our very first meeting. I think we had an idea of what it was going to look like and how it was going to operate. But that changed really quickly with all the focus groups at work that we did, and the customer feedback, and then the sheer practicalities of learning. So the product is quite different from the white paper that we started with 2.5 years ago. So that surprised me. I think the other thing that surprised me was the difficulty in compliance and regulations. We probably underestimated that and the time it was going to take. So we've had BNZ have been a fantastic partner. Windcave and Stripe have been great as well, but it's really time consuming. And as
no one wants to go as fast as us, like nobody.
It's always true with the startups.
Yeah. No, it's like 2 days. Why haven't they emailed us back? So you learn some patience, and you get really good at your communication.
And I think the other thing that really surprised us was the clients pushing for IPromise in many businesses and many industries, more so than the supplier. And that probably caught us a little bit off guard, where companies came to us and said, actually, our clients want us to put all our deposits through IPromise. And that was something that, we always hoped. But initially, when we were in our first discussions, people were always saying, "Oh, I don't know about the client. I don't know what they're going to think about it." But that was quite, quite a nice surprise, actually.
Yeah.
And look, I know we're going to come to the Q&As as well formally in a minute, but just some of the, curiosity questions from my end. What are the industries that are coming? Is there any trends that you're seeing in terms of which industries are quicker to uptake and become early adopters in their space, versus, who you might have thought will be the first to jump at this?
Yeah. Well, tiny homes have been for all sorts of reasons and quite public reasons around some of the unfortunate circumstances that some companies have got themselves into. So tiny home business has been quite good for us, and we haven't. That wasn't on our target market earlier on, so that was a surprise. And also just service-based industries that are outside of construction. We thought construction and plumbers and electricians and builders and painters would be really quick off the mark, but in fact it's probably they've been slower to adopt. We've still got some, don't get me wrong, but certainly we've got marketers and digging contractors and engineers using us, which we thought we might have had more tradie based take up early on, but they're so incredibly busy and working so hard to just try and get through their days that it's really hard for them to start up something new, a new process or a new system. So that's probably been that's been the industry specific feedback.
Yeah, and look, that's pretty consistent with a lot of feedback. Obviously, we work really closely with SME sector across the board, across 20 different industries. And truly the consistency is around that, really having the bandwidth and the time to get out of the business in order to work on it. Even when people do know that tools like this and the other digital tools actually will eventually free up time, because this is really a time gainer overall. It gives them the security. Obviously, really helps free up the cash flow, which is dearly needed. But it actually also cuts on some of that admin and chasing. And to your earlier point, the dignity of it all. If you've done a job and you know that you've done the job, you need to be paid for it rather than having to chase people. Totally. There is a kind of a pride component to it. That sounds great. Now, have you got any more slides, or should we jump into some of the Q&A?
Just two, I think.
Yeah, really quick. Just really quick.
Go for it. You've got time.
The next is just some future development for us. We've got always adding features. Again, with a startup, you find things you want to add, find things that didn't work so well. That's a great part of the business, but also Paul and I are conscious of you could always keep adding. Like you can, and there's a stage when you're like, we're just going to run with this, and this is where we're going to go for the the next 6 months, and then just build on the product we've got. We're gonna upgrade to a native app. At the moment, we're just working on a web-based app, which works really well for us at the moment, and this kind of design, early stage. We're working on embedded finance, and lots of people might know what that's about, but it's giving a facility for clients or buyers available from IPromise to go and get finance, and it's a channel for a finance company to jump on in here and offer finance for someone that just might need it because something's happened, short notice or whatever it might be. And then expansion, that's it's the problem elsewhere in Australia and America and Europe, that they have the same problems. And then also at the moment, because we're just really small businesses, there's this integration with the more business to business, the bigger businesses. So how do we work with larger contracts, and how do we protect a large client's money while projects take place? The final thing we've got is just a special offer for Digital Boost users. We can throw this on the notes after the session, and it's a $40 offer for any user to come on and sign up and send us a mock invoice, a mock quote, and then we'll they'll see how the process works, and then they'll receive $40 into their nominated bank account just for taking part.
Nice. Wow, that's you packed in quite a lot there. Thank you so much. It was that was really cool, and obviously for us, it's always a pleasure to have independent contributors like yourself coming to tell us about the services or cool new apps or digital tools that make life easier for our small business owners. So I've got a couple of questions for you from Brian here. As a sole trader, I'm also a purchaser of services. So he's also a client. And from the client's perspective, doesn't this mean that I'm expected to pay the full price even before the job started? Is that what's in it for me?
Yeah, so I think if I understand the question, he's saying, would I have to pay in advance? And the whole thing about IPromise is yes, you do in order to secure the job. But the good thing is you can break it into stages. So if the job costs $50,000, then you'd only be expected to, you could break that job into 5 lots of 10, for instance. And we find that that's really manageable, and many businesses are asking for deposits anyway, which is even harder because you're handing over the money with nothing to show for it other than the trust that they are going to deliver something. So yes, it is a collection of payment in advance, so that means you have to pay in advance, but it's secure and you can break it into those stages.
And I suspect that there is no limitation in terms of the dollar amount as to the size of the job, right? No, it's totally dependent on you. You can make it for as much as you want. All the system's really open, and we can actually cope with really large transactions as well. So nice. So there's more, a few more questions along those veins, which is actually really great because people are getting into nitty-gritty and trying to understand. From Paul, how can I use this platform for a job that I provide an estimate instead of a fixed quote, or a job that I can charge on time and cost? So where the final payment is not, is only known at the end of the job, essentially.
So yeah, we've got quite a few tradies using this method, and what we've explained to them is that if they know what a week's worth of work is, or if they know what a week's worth of or 2 weeks worth of work is, they can again break the project up into stages, and then at least get payment in advance before starting that work. So that they might send someone an invoice for, an estimate 30 grand, and they can break it up into some stages. And then they jump into IPromise and say, look, I can start your project. The first stage is going to be 10 grand. And then once they've done that first stage, then they can add a stage using IPromise and send them another quote for 10 grand. And then, then they complete that stage once the money's been put in, been transferred into the trust account. And then they pretty much just have a wash up amount at the end, so you
can almost structure payments around the deliverables, I guess, right?
Yeah, 100%.
One item can be a particular portion of the deliverable of the job.
Yeah, because quite often in construction, like, and I've worked in it 20 years, the hardest invoice to get is the last one. That's the one that people hold on to. That's the one where...
Are you really done? Is it really complete?
They've run out of money. They've done this project and they're like, oh, Jesus, let's just keep going. So, so that last one, you want to make sure you're going, right, this is how much this last part for me. I'm going to be there another 2 more weeks. You should be able to give a pretty good quote, by then. And then again, Paul and I tell people, like, you just got to be a bit accurate in your quote. Like you can attach lots of information in IPromise to your quote, and then you can just say to your client, look, that's what I quoted, so I've done that work. So again, it's breaking it up into stages. You can add variations as well within it. So within a stage, if the client said something and said, look, I want you to add another page to my website, or, I want you to spend another week doing something for me, then you just click add a variation, send them a quote, and again, collect the money before you do the job. Because I know variations, you get to the end of it and they're like, oh, did I tell you to do that? Oh, I didn't,
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that, because often, especially when the projects did last for a while, over a period of time, right? There can be, there's a little bit of that loss of, what you would call in the project led, the decision log, and a track of what decisions were made by whom and when. I suspect, especially if you maybe are dealing with a couple and maybe you've got both of them that you're working with, a husband and a wife, and so obviously this actually leaves a record of that, right? It's essentially officially leaves a record, or where there have been changes in decision, or variations added, or requoting, or even some variations to the, say, construction plan, or whatever the original intent was.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally right. And the couples, things really common in terms of different agreements with different people, but if you're agreeing what you're providing before you start it, and you've secured the money and they've agreed to pay for that, then that's taking out 95% of the issues and the communication problems and the difference of opinion of what's actually being delivered.
And I guess scouring through the emails and text messages, because then you actually need to go back and check what that thread is, which we could get to in a minute, because of course somebody did ask about the disputes question, and I've been dying to ask you about the disputes question. But just before that, Canterbury Builders want to know, can you invoice a percentage completed on line items of the quote? So let's say that a line item is for laying foundations, you completed 80% of it. Could you percentage invoice, percentage completion?
Yes, you can, but it would be just setting it up slightly different to the current practice. So you would send a IPromise quote for that stage, whatever you determine it is. So that might be the foundations 80%. So what you quote for is what you secure in the trust account, and the supplier determines exactly how that is. Now, different people are used to operating in different ways, and so it's just, we do a lot of training with suppliers to help them to reorganize their quoting and reorganizing their structures in order to get paid in the right way. And they've found that really beneficial, because it's not a change how they actually complete the project physically. It's just their system of when they quote and when they invoice.
Nice. So Douglas has asked that question around how do you treat variations during work? And I think you've addressed it quite a bit, but also how do the disputes work? How does the dispute process work between a supplier and a client? Great question.
Yeah, so we're not really, solving disputes. Disputes occur over lots of different reasons, but, some of them are quality of work. Some of them are what was agreed on and what was done. So the thing with having a detailed quote is, you can go through that and say, look, this is what was quoted, and this is what I provided. So I should be entitled to the money. But if there is a dispute, the best thing is that no one has the money. So you don't have a client, again, who's holding on to that money, who's just saying, I'm not going to pay you. Like they don't have the money. They can't just want the money back for no reason at all. So then that pretty much just, sets up a disputes process. And within our website, we give some steps about how to proceed with that. But it's, the first step is just talk to the, some communication. But if that doesn't work, then it just goes down to a disputes resolution. That might be small claims, it might be lawyers, I don't know, the size of the project. But IPromise will only act on an agreement between the supplier and the client, or a disputes resolution. So, like, we know that, that doesn't sound like it's solving the disputes problem, but we're not there to solve the disputes problem. We're there to just protect that money to make sure that it is secure, and then it's dished out to the people who are entitled to it. So,
you're like Switzerland.
Yeah.
Well, there's a really high motivation to solve it because, as Matt said, no one's got the money, and that changes people's. We act on what's fair and reasonable. That's all we do, and that's what we should. We should only be acting on what's fair and reasonable, and so that's determined by, as Matt said, the disputes process. And so, if it ends up going to arbitration as the final extreme step, then the arbitrator's decided what's fair and reasonable for those two parties, and then we'll act on that. But we are going to get disputes. We haven't had any yet, but when we do, we'll be following that process.
Well, I hope you don't. It'll be nice, right? It'll just confirm that high trust. Thanks for that. So from Bradley, what is the difference between your service with the IPromise and getting a bank guarantee?
Our service and getting a bank guarantee. Well, the first thing is it's super simple. So I don't know if anyone's been to. We've had a great experience with our bank that we're using, but this is simple. You don't need to talk to anyone. You just use the app and you click buttons and you protect your money. So that's the difference. It's everyday escrow for someone that wants to just buy a car secondhand, do a job, invoice someone for some services. So that's quite a substantial difference, I'd say.
In having to go into the bank, and I guess in this instance as well, it's about the releasing those funds as well, on both sides.
Absolutely.
And it makes it what I call the life admin hour, which is something you can do at 10 o'clock at night rather than
100%.
And you can do it the whole thing from your phone, so that's been really important to us. It's got to be, we've had, I think the oldest people worry about technology and it being difficult. We had an 87-year-old register and pay for quite a large deposit using our app. And so for us, that's a really good test of simplicity. And in the same way, other companies like Sharesies have brought something that can seem quite complicated to everyday people.
Yeah, it is really that access. And this is where that value of the digital tools, because you got, especially if you're running a small business, you've got such limitation on your working day and the hours, and maximizing that for your customers, for the growth, for strategic goals of the business, your staff, and looking after your staff and making sure all that works. That actually whatever you can do in terms of this life admin after hours makes it so much easier. Peace of mind as well.
Yeah. Look, payment worries are, the forefront of almost every small business. Everyone has anxiety about it. Everyone's worried about, whether or not they're going to get paid this month for the invoices they've sent out. So this, IPromise is a step towards reducing that anxiety about payments. the color of the job changes, once it's in progress and the money's there and it's been secured, and you're kind of just reassured that that the client has the money for you to do your job. But one of our similarities is like you can't book a flight with Air New Zealand and get them to invoice you when you come back. So why should us service providers who be like, oh, look, I'll do your job and then I'll fork out all this time and money and then you pay me, 20 days later. So it's just a broken business model.
It's a peace of mind, and actually cash flow, as we all know, it really helps managing that.
Yeah.
We've got time for one more question. So I'm going to throw that at you from Douglas as well. Can you use IPromise for a one-off payment? For example, paying for a car on Trade Me.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the key purposes for it. So, if you've got a big trade, and we use the example of, particularly if you're buying a vehicle in a different region that you're in, that's problematic as well. You arrange on the phone, you might Facebook Marketplace and agree on $10,000. You can't pick it up that instant. That person's really hesitant to take it off Facebook Marketplace because you've said you're going to buy it, but are you really? But with IPromise, you'd put the $10,000 into the trust account. They can see that you're committed. You fly or drive or whatever to the region to pick up the car. Maybe a week later, look at the car. If it's exactly as you expected, you press the buttons on the app and you've released the money. So 100%.
Amazing. Any more questions here? They've done so well, both Matt and Paul. Thank you both for coming. So obviously, there's going to be a bit of a follow-up. This is live streaming, and the recordings will be sent out to all of you guys who RSVP'd and maybe even couldn't attend to there. We'll include the link to the offer from IPromise into there and some contact details. But I've been on the IPromise website. It's much like the app, super simple, really easy to navigate. Some great educational videos, dear guys, if you need a bit more information or have further questions for Paul and Matt. Later this week on Thursday, we've got a 2-hour workshop, which is going to be with Sam Harith from SH Advisory. And that is going to be really aimed at those who want to get into being landlords, whether that's a property investment or they've already got properties that they want to rent and lease out. So you can join, hopefully Anna Marie, by the time she's back, she might be in a better shape enough. You're going to have to bear with me again. And that will be an easy overview of the current tax challenges from that perspective of residential rental investors and what is the year 2024 going to bring in terms of tax. So there's going to be an interesting one for those of you that are interested in that. Obviously, Paul and Matt, thank you so much both for today. I hope you had good time joining the session as well as we did. And I'll see you all later in the week.
Thank you very much.
The sun.
Sorry about that.
Should have said that on your face.
Oh, did you sleep? Problem.